Welcome to a special episode of Storywave, everyone. Now, a lot of you don't get to hear my voice very often. I'm Eric Johnson.
This is Michael Maloy.
We're going to talk to each other and check in with you guys. We've been doing this podcast for about 7 months. We've been loving it, and we want to talk about, I don't know, how it is, why we're doing this, what our vision is. We'll talk about some of the things we've learned and done along the way, and
where we're taking the project in the future.
Exactly, and where we're going.
Yeah.
So, Michael, how do we know each other?
Yeah. Well, pretty normal story. We met in school when we were in college, playing music together, actually. We sat in the back row of a wind symphony, if you will, an orchestra together.
That's right. You're a tuba player.
Yep.
Tubist.
For life.
Yep. I play French horn. I remember throwing stuff in your bell.
Yeah, we really hit it off from there. We did a little bit of creative stuff in college together, but I think it was mostly just, jamming.
Yeah,
jamming
we
on
did
some music with friends.
Well, we did our music listening party. I think that's how we actually became friends.
Right. Yeah, sitting in front of 2 giant speaker stacks set on an empty bed frame in our dorm rooms, listening to, what was it? Amaranth?
Oh yeah, Nightwish.
Yep.
Yeah, so we would blast loud, obnoxious metal and also do like super chill,
as kids do,
ambient stuff. Remember like the fountain thing you had?
Oh, that's right. People flocked to my dorm room because of the little rain fountain.
Yeah,
that trickled.
People love that thing. I don't know if I told you, but I'm a therapist for those who don't know. And my first 3 years of practicing, I had that in my office, Michael's same fountain. And people loved it. It was a huge hit, and I've never really fully understood that. But
yeah, so I think that's actually a good segue into our next topic here, just what we do for a living.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Talk about it, Michael. What do you do for a living?
Right on. I work in live entertainment now, full time. If you know what a stagehand is, that's what I do, and I really love both lighting and audio. So eventually I want to produce, some kind of visual show.
You got to recently do the spotlighting for Tina Fey and Amy Poehler.
I did. Right? Man, they can move.
Yeah, they're quick up there. Yeah,
that was a good time.
And you didn't set them on fire, so that's good.
Nope.
And I'm a therapist, as I previously mentioned. And well, we got this idea. I remember very clearly. I was doing a job where it was a swing shift. Doing like a mental health outreach job, and Michael came by, and it's like 10 p.m. or so. We're both exhausted, and we're just talking about what we want to do creatively, because we've always done music together. We've always had like creative projects.
Yeah, I mean, we've
been
producing music together for the last couple of years, actually, just for fun.
And we've like independently been doing stuff.
Yeah.
We're very unfocused people that like to just do music.
Yeah, we're both classically trained, so I think that definitely comes through in some of the instrumentation you have heard and will hear in future episodes, especially Monday's episode, The Last of the Asgard.
Yeah, Michael's full of just creative energy, and
always. I'm the ideas man.
Yeah, you're the ideas man. You're always working on something, and I think one of the things we love making together is more like ambient, soundtracky, synthwave music.
Yeah. So something I want to ask you, Eric, is who inspires your musical taste?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, as lately, I listen to a lot of synthwave. I really like, for those of you who know, like Allison, Downtown Binary. I mean, I like a lot of like modern soundtrack composers right now. I mean, who doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
Who's not incredibly inspired by Hans Zimmer?
Oh yeah, that's my boy.
Yeah, Johan Johansson. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to echo those film composers primarily as my biggest inspirations, because I've gotten a lot more into scoring, composing lately. I'd like to do that for video games professionally. Either 3D art or, composing music.
What are some of your favorite video game soundtracks?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, number one would have to be Spiritfarer. Spiritfarer is this adorable game that's all animation. I guess you could say it's 2D. And And it just has this like really eclectic soundtrack by a guy named Max LL. Definitely look him up, 'cause he's done a lot of other stuff, even recent stuff. It's equal parts calming and energetic at different times, and just very unique instrumentation wise.
I don't know it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll show you. Yeah, other game soundtracks. Let's see. I mean, the one that really inspired my journey into composition was Astroneer, from a Seattle-based studio. Actually, they're called System Era. That's one of the. It's really the biggest game they've produced. It's very like bouncy, fun music, with a lot of synths and other electronic sounds like that, but very space inspired.
Those are great answers. I would say music for the Donkey Kong Country games on the SNES, where I loved them immediately when I played as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, film tends to be, comes to mind more, like Ghibli films.
Oh yeah, Joe Hisashi.
Joe Hisaishi.
Oh, Hisaishi.
Was even in town.
Horribly mispronounced that.
Oh, that's okay. It's Japanese.
Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah, he was in Seattle for a live show recently.
Yeah, for his Symphony No. 2 and Violin Sagas.
Yeah,
which are both amazing pieces for those who haven't listened to them yet.
Right.
We're both into like Philip Glass and Steve Reich as well, like some of the minimalist composers in the 80s,
which has inspired our ambient soundtracks, as you can probably tell. And I personally really love, in terms of just straight up music for performance purposes, I love John Hopkins, this UK artist who does a lot of like electronic ambient things, but then he breaks down the sounds after he produces them. So things get very glitchy and interesting there. And then Nils Fromm, who I believe is from Germany. So he's mostly touring, performing over in Europe. But he just has the most incredible builds in a lot of his songs, and is such a great live performer because he's got such an intimate relationship with all of his gear. For any of you synth gear nerds out there,
surprisingly like minimal setup for like the sound he gets. It's pretty impressive. Sound.
Yeah, go look him up on YouTube, please.
I'll say the other couple guys I really like, Hauschka. I'm not remembering. Well, I have a computer here in front
of me. First name?
So I can.
Yeah, Google that.
Yeah. Volker. So Hauschka is Volker Bertelmann's project. He's also a film composer. He did the music for, I know off the top of my head, he did for All Quiet on the Western Front, where he won an Oscar for.
Awesome.
He's got some other good scores too, which I'm not remembering off the top of my head. He did something I watched recently, but all that to say, so yeah, Volker Bertelmann has a project called Hauschka, which he has like prepared piano stuff, kind of like John Cage, but does a lot of like live looping and like live, like you can see him like move stuff off the strings and the piano to get different effects. It's really cool. And he does
prepared piano.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then I think another guy I really like is Blank Mass. It's the amount of sound he gets. It's less ambient, more like aggressive and in your face.
Oh yeah,
it's good stuff. Anyways, that's enough about what we're into. So we came up with Storywave. Let's talk about Storywave.
Ooh, one quick note actually, just to backtrack. I think it'd be really fun if those who see this on YouTube, listen to this on YouTube, if you could put in the comments what some of your favorite musicians are, what your musical inspirations are, just in terms of genre or subgenre, style, whatever. That would be awesome.
Yeah, give us some stuff to listen to.
Yeah, please. All right. Anyway.
So with Storywave, how did we come up with that name?
Yeah, we were really inspired, as you probably figured out by now, by the synthwave genre, kind of harkening back to the time of the 80s, where a lot of incredible music came from. But synthwave has this awesome kind of whole energy around it that is very retro and like, I don't want to say formulaic, but very structured, musically speaking.
Yeah. I should interrupt and quickly say 80s soundtracks, there's some incredible ones.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you, this is technically 79. If those of you who have seen hardcore, for those of you who haven't seen Hardcore, an incredible synth soundtrack. It's a little bit of a pull. It's so good though. I highly recommend it.
Maybe we should do a bonus episode where we just watch that and commentate on it.
100% down. Turn it off.
Yes. Anyway.
So we're in this. Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, no worries. So we were inspired by just the whole idea of synthwave. We wanted to, and we have kind of already harkened to that musical style with earlier episodes, but things have musically have become very ambient, and we have been experimenting with some new techniques to us for both, electronic instruments like synths and acoustic instruments in our recordings.
What would you say the idea of this podcast is? What is this podcast?
Yeah.
What do we want this to be?
Absolutely. So this is primarily a storytelling podcast where we write original music behind it, and all of it, at least up until the latest episode, is all done in one take. It's totally improvised. So that is kind of the unique musical spin we're trying to bring.
Yeah. The one preface there is that there have been 2 episodes which we've actually composed. Last Question and then Twilight of the Gods, just because Last Question was the very first one we did, and we probably spent upwards of 40 hours on it combined.
Yeah.
And then Twilight of the Gods, it's a cool story, so we wanted to take some extra time. Every other episode though, we sit down in the same room and we just jam to your voice, to you reading a story.
Yeah. My sweet sonorous tones.
Yeah. Which actually leads me to a question. You're the one that chose Asgard Stories.
I did.
How'd this come about?
It's pretty simple, really. I already have a couple of friends and coworkers who are really into Norse mythology and knew that ahead of time. And where else does your audience start as, a young growing podcast, except with your friends and family, right? So I picked something that might be interesting. We were on Project Gutenberg looking for, maybe I have to cut that out.
We can, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll figure that out.
See. We'll see if that stays in.
I think we can say that.
We were looking at a public domain website, which has an awesome amount of stories, honestly, an overwhelming number. And I happened upon this Asgard Stories collection that was basically rewritten from the original myths, like a lot of myths are over time, into a set of, 13 total stories?
Something like that. I already don't remember. Yeah, I liked this one. It was good timing because I, 6 months ago, I actually read one of the early texts where these myths come from. It's called the Prose Edda. And it was written by, maybe it was 12th century Icelandic man named Snorri Sturluson.
Oh, yeah. If you guys haven't read about Snorri's story, that wasn't intentional. It's actually fascinating. So definitely go do that. I mean, even if just for sort of comedic historical value.
Yeah, I believe he was murdered in his own cellar. I think I just read that recently. I forget why. I think he pissed off the king of Norway.
Yes, and that's exactly why.
Whose name I believe also was Horkin Horkinson or something like that.
We'll have to fact check that.
Also, we are not historians, and let's make that very clear. We generally don't know what we're talking about here. But I loved the idea because I had read it, and it's like any ancient text. It can be both interesting and dry and very confusing.
Yep.
And I liked how this was. They broke it out into chunks that they. It's not the way it's originally written. It's just big block of text, and you kind of get hit with one story after the other. And some of them are quite bizarre. So they didn't include every story that's included in the original.
Yeah. So, Eric, what would you say were some of your favorite parts of these myths that we read?
They're very silly. I mean, if you think about Norse myths, you think of Thor and Mjolnir and frost giants and gods and fire and ice. I mean, these stories have inspired Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, the Ring Cycle, all these great epics. Mm-hmm. And then the myths include Thor bonking a giant on its head, and choosing a husband by like their feet, like it's a Tarantino movie.
That was wild.
Yeah, they're very goofy, but then get very dark at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's a good balance of levity and seriousness, and I really tried to read into that too.
What was your favorite part?
Yeah, I think honestly, my first favorite was trying to get into the head of this Norse giant, Mimir, when he was talking to Thor and trying to, give that gift of wisdom.
It's Odin.
Sorry, thank you, Odin. Yeah, it's been a while. Don't judge
We're
me.
not historians, people.
When he was talking to Odin, I really got into that character, and then that, obviously, those skills transferred later to other characters, and yeah, there were just some really silly voices I got to do, especially for like the dwarves in the caves, which appeared a couple of times, things like that.
The voice you did for the giant for Thor's wonderful journey, I thought was hilarious.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we should say Michael's never acted before, and the longer we do this, I personally think the better Michael's acting gets. I mean,
thanks.
In our second episode, 0 Hour, the way like you played kids, it's amazing.
Oh yeah, those kid voices are so fun.
Yeah,
I think that's in the wheelhouse for sure.
So, I guess we talk about the music a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the unique thing I think we're bringing this podcast is we're both musicians. We want like music to be as important as the stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess as far as Asgard stories go, what do you want to share about our musical process throughout this?
Yeah. I mean, in case it got lost in the Spotify descriptions originally, our main profile description, we, at least up until the latest episode, have been writing this music and performing it in one take on the spot for every single episode.
To save time, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Professionals, yeah.
It's really mostly for that reason. But I think it lends itself to, a kind of different style of music. It's a lot more spontaneous, and it has been teaching us some good live performance skills. It's hard to improvise for that long in a way that actually sounds good.
Some fun sound editing stuff or like sound mixing stuff we did. There's a violin throughout a lot of the episodes, and that literally is just a single note we sampled on a violin Michael owns. Neither of us know how to play the violin.
Oh yeah, no, that was great.
And we like just put a bunch of effects on it, and I think it's a pretty cool sound, and maybe I might even include it in post. I'm feeling fancy. Maybe
a little sound effect.
A little sound effect, yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Tantalize the audience.
Yeah, exactly. We in our latest episode, Twilight of the Gods, the sound of the eagle, when it makes a shrill cry, that is an actual eagle, and that I just pitched down and threw some reverb and delay on it, so it didn't sound like just an eagle.
Oh yeah, and we've done some other acoustic recordings as well. Besides the violin, like we got a harpist to play some harp for us.
Who happens to be my partner, yes.
Yeah. That was awesome.
We actually got a real harp in this, yeah.
And even invited some special musical guests. So yeah, that's kind of our process from a broad perspective. We definitely have composed most of this with electronic instruments, but like we mentioned, we got some acoustic going too. Yeah,
we should mention the name Storywave. We got that because we both love synthwave, and we, like we've mentioned, as musicians, we are all over the place. We love every genre and play a variety of instruments, but lately I would say we both have been messing around with synths and making synthwave, and so we've tried to keep that a theme for this podcast, that we try to use synthwave, but we also can't help using some orchestral instruments and
branching out.
Yeah,
that's my favorite thing to do, at least.
Yeah, we both have a variety of tastes. So Michael, where do you actually, you know what, let's talk about where we're going from here.
Yeah, the future.
So going forward with the podcast, we're going to change it up a little bit. I think 2 episodes a month. We're still doing weekly episodes. I think 2 episodes a month will be longer and more focused on sci-fi stories, sci-fi/horror from like the 40s, 50s, 60s, stuff that's public domain. And then the other 2 will be probably shorter in length and will be me doing the narration to free
Yeah.
up some of Michael's time, and I'll have a bit more fun with that and kind of branch out into different genres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we have time, we'll fill in those 2 extra weeks each month with a little shorter thing.
Yeah.
Because you said, I think you might have already mentioned this, but you said you wanted to do some meditations as well, right? And
Yeah, I was thinking
written
about doing that too, writing some little meditations or little musing about mental health. Being a therapist, sometimes I'm surprised by the similarities of stuff we're going through. I think sometimes, depending on what's going on, I notice similar themes coming up with people, at least with my clients. Although I'm working for the particular population. But I thought maybe I'll write some musings about little meditations with mental health and have a little relaxing music under there. We're not sure. We got a lot of ideas.
Love to love it.
Yeah. All right. We'll end. Michael, I have a question. What is one artist you've been listening to lately and one thing you've read lately that you've been into?
Oh, love it. I'll have to put the listening on the back burner while I check out Spotify, because that's basically my musical brain at this point. But I've been reading a great book lately, given to me by my fiance, and that is The Dictionary of Lost Words.
I like how you willed that into existence.
What's that?
That is.
I know, right? Had to, drum up the brain grapes, if you will.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah, that's a really awesome story about how when this dictionary in the UK was being written in the late 1700s, early 1800s, many words were excluded simply because they weren't spoken traditionally by the majority, which was men back then, the cultural majority. So one of the very young female writers of the dictionary went about and started her own dictionary of, quote, lost words that were not being fairly enough represented. So it's an awesome story.
Do you have a favorite word?
I mean, yeah, probably. As a former,
one of the favorite lost word.
Someone who formerly wanted to be a lexicographer.
Say that again.
Lexicographer.
Wow.
I think that's one of my favorite words.
Someone who cogs lexis.
Yeah, precisely.
Nice.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one, and very little known because not everybody's into reading dictionaries like I am.
Is that your favorite word from the lost word?
Let's see. I think it is, just off the top of the head, because most words in that book aren't especially unique. Ooh, no, knackered. Knackered is
knackered.
That's got to be my favorite.
It's mean like drunk or
no.
Knackered.
It's a more British. It's a more common British term these days. But in British English, it means essentially to be worn out so deeply from serving others. It's not just tired. It's beyond that. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. That's a great word.
Right? I'm so knackered after this long work week.
The thing I read recently is a recommendation that you gave me, actually, which is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's a great book. What artists you been listening to lately?
Let's see. Honestly, it's been mostly soundtracks lately, which should come as no surprise to anybody by this point in the episode. So it's been Max Richter and Max LL, ironically both Maxes. Max Richter is sort of a minimalist musician as well, who's really known for combining traditional orchestral instruments with synths, which a lot of people are doing these days, but I would also love to kind of do that same thing in my musical endeavors.
Max Richter is great. Album I've been loving recently is Image Issues by Brittany Davis.
Right on.
Highly recommend listening to it. It's incredible.
I don't know her.
Oh yeah, she's great. She's here in Seattle, actually.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, she's absolutely incredible. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll catch you next week.